Dr. Siobhan O'Sullivan does like knowing animals. Dr. Siobhan O'Sullivan does like knowing animals.
Hey people, welcome to Knowing Animals. Knowing Animals is a podcast where we speak to animal studies scholars about a piece of their work. I'm Siobhan O'Sullivan and I do like knowing animals. Well, this episode of Knowing Animals is brought to you by ASA. ASA is the Australasian Animal Studies Association. ASA does a lot of really fantastic work to support animal studies scholars. One of the things they do is run a conference every 2 years. And I'm actually recording this episode in New Zealand because I'm here to attend the 2019 ASA conference. So as the episodes roll on and the days of the conference roll on, I'll be able to bring you a lot of good news from the ASA conference. But of course, the conference wouldn't be possible without the hard work, of the ASA committee. And of course, they need members. They rely on membership subs to run. So if you're not a member of ASA, please think about joining ASA, the Australasian Animal Studies Association. Well, as I mentioned, this episode comes to you from the beautiful city of Christchurch in the lovely country of New Zealand, where the world's nicest people reside, as we all know. And I'm really, really pleased to be joined this week by Nicholas Holm. Nick is Senior Lecturer in Media Studies at Massey University. And today we're going to discuss his journal article, Consider the Squirrel, Freaks, Vermin and Value in the Ruins of Nature, which appeared in Cultural Critique in 2012. Welcome to the podcast, Nick.
Kia ora, Siobhan. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Thank you for being here. So, Nick, what inspired this piece of work?
Of everything I've ever written, this piece has the clearest inspiration. The moments that really form this paper, this was originally written as part of my coursework as a graduate student in Canada. And while I was in Canada, one of my favourite things were squirrels. And every morning, having my coffee in my apartment, I could look out into the backyard and there were squirrels running along the power lines, squirrels playing on the lawn, jumping from branch to branch. And, as I waited for the bus, if I was sitting in a seminar and a bit bored, I could always look out and there would be squirrels. And I absolutely adored them. I love squirrels. I think that's not uncommon for New Zealanders and probably Australians. They're special. They're different. And whenever I'm in North America or Europe, they captivate me. And I discovered that this was weird. I discovered that my fellow graduate students regarded this as an anomaly or a mistake on my part. That I would think of these as little wild animals, that I would watch them the way, people would pay to watch dolphins or whales or, some majestic wild creature. And I wanted to work out why. I wanted to work out why for them these animals didn't count. These animals weren't the equivalent of other more fascinating creatures. And so, that was really what prompted me to write this article.
Wonderful. So, Nick, it is a lot about squirrels, but it's within the context of a discussion about conservation ethics and valuing nature or change, and, ideas about change in nature all come up. Can you run us through your central argument in terms of how you see ecologists and their attitude towards change?
Well, what I got to with the squirrels I ran about was that the problem was that they seemed to survive in environments that were deemed to not be properly natural. That the conditions under which squirrels did best were the wrong conditions, were decayed, corrupt, urban conditions. And in order to make sense of this, I tried to work through ideas of, what kind of animals are valued and what does that say about the larger structures that we expect from them and we expect from their environments. And conservationist discourse tends to regard the proper arrangement of nature to be the one where humans have not been. The most unsullied, the most pristine, or where if human presence has been a part of it, where that human presence has been stripped back or controlled. And I guess I'm particularly aware of this as a New Zealander. In New Zealand, this is a huge part of not just our ecological conservation kind of discourse, but also the way we understand ourselves as a country. And so, not just ideas about how we regard nature, but how we regard ourselves. New Zealand is dedicated to a very bloody, violent conservationist project. And I'm particularly aware of this because I grew up in Karori, in Wellington, where the Zealandia Sanctuary is. And I remember as a kid when they built the Zealandia Sanctuary, in which they put a very high predator-proof fence around a part of the city, part of the suburb, which where my scout hall used to be when I was a kid, and eliminated all the wrong animals and reset it back to its proper state. And so I'm interested in, why is this the right way that nature should be? Why should nature stop? Why should a particular arrangement be desired? And in particular, for those who understand themselves as being committed to a progressive project or even a revolutionary politics, if we want to make society better, if we want to change it, why is the idea that we could make nature better? Why does that seem so wrong? Why does that seem like, you've made a mistake if you say, well, we should improve, the way we should improve a society, we should also improve nature. Well, why does the idea of improving nature seem wrong? And that's what I was trying to get to. And I think that's tied up with, why do we hate squirrels, and why can't we improve on nature?
And it's really interesting, Nick, because one of the things you point out is that some of the ways in which we try to improve society, which we see as very much our task, our very lofty objective, we take those principles and we apply them to nature. And so one of the things you point to, for example, is hierarchies. We love hierarchies in social justice terms, or thinking about human nature, and we employ them to nature. Can you say something about the role you see hierarchies playing in our thinking about ecology and conservation?
Well, to tie it back to the squirrel, is squirrels are meant to be at the bottom. In the proper arrangement of nature, if humans weren't there, squirrels are meant to be. There's not meant to be many of them. They are there to feed the bigger, better, more important animals. And in the city, they thrive. They lose a lot of their natural predators. There's a lot of more food sources. They boom. They exist en masse. They exist in new kind of ways. And there was a section originally in this article, which my peer reviewer told me to get rid of, which I'm very glad to have a chance to revisit, where I thought a bit about, could nature be democratic? What would it mean to apply the principles of equality to animals? And, thought about this in terms of nature's a kingdom, right? Nature's not a democracy. Nature's a kingdom. We have king of the beasts. We have, whenever we see representations of the natural world, they tend not to be democracies. They tend to be very hierarchical. And I think those hierarchies really structure what we think about which animals are valued, which animals are not, right? I imagine most of your listeners are very familiar with critiques and discussions around charismatic megafauna. But I think it goes even further than that, right? And partly I regret writing this about squirrels. I could have written about pigeons. I could have written about seagulls. And I think squirrels are necessary because of my love, and as kind of a bridge. But I also think this applies to insects, to cockroaches, to microorganisms. These are also natural animals. These also have a place. These also, if we're valuing animals, why are we not valuing these animals? And I notice, we're going to this conference, no one's talking about animals that are smaller than we can see. Those animals seem to drop out of our conversations. And I think if we want to think about how we relate to nature, how we relate to non-human animals in an equitable and a caring and a reflexive way, why do those ones drop out?
Yeah, it's interesting. And, one of the things that's very front of mind to me as an Australian coming across to New Zealand for a conference and seeing people is that, I love New Zealand and I love New Zealanders. And, of course, living in Australia, I have the opportunity to interact very often with Kiwis. But you come here and the poor opossum is, the poor opossum's just a couple of hours out of where he or she belongs, where they belong, and suddenly they're persecuted. What does your thinking mean in terms of your animals who find themselves out of context and kind of the bloody, brutal response we give them?
Well, that's the follow-up to this article, right? There's a footnote in this article about possums. I guess one of the things I try and articulate in the article is that I start referring to possums as non-animals, animals that you can look at and think, well, that's actually not a real animal. It doesn't really belong here. It doesn't really count. If I love animals, but I don't need to love squirrels. I don't need to love rats. I can be a green consciousness, ecological consciousness, and cut them out. Possums are the next step. Possums, in an article I wrote a bit more recently called Consider the Possum, I got stuck on the title kind of structure, and it repeats forever. If squirrels are non-animals, possums are anti-animals. If you love nature, you kill them. So if you love nature, you can ignore squirrels. If you love nature, you have to kill possums. That is kind of how they're being constructed in our local context in Aotearoa, as an intruder, as a manifestation that something has gone wrong with the natural environment. I think that's a continuation of this train of thought, right? Animals that are not allowed to be animals, for conservationist thinking, for ecological thinking, for green thinking. If you love animals in New Zealand, then you're meant to, that's in quotation marks, you're meant to kill them, you're meant to hate them, you're meant to destroy them. But I think possums are great, because I love squirrels, and possums are the closest thing, and, they're very friendly, they're very cute. I mean, Annie Potts, our host here, has written about possums quite a lot, and very perceptively. Absolutely. So possums, I think, are the next step in the ways, as part of this larger, what I'm always interested in drawing attention to when I'm writing about animals is the ways in which certain animals don't count. Certain animals become stripped of their status, stripped of their title. So even those who love animals, who dedicate their lives to thinking about them, they can put these off in a little box and not have to worry about the contradictions, the problems, the gaps that open up around them. So, I think possums are, absolutely, the way they're treated here is reprehensible, and I think something to do with the way in which Pakeha settlers, the things that destroyed our native wildlife, sure, possums, but you know what? Cows, roads, buildings, people. If you want to restore our native wildlife, you don't. I guess possums are on the list, but they're way down. The cows, the animals that hurt our environment are cows in this country. I probably shouldn't have said that. I'll probably have my passport revoked, but
No, you're right, of course. And we're sitting here in this beautiful accommodation in this house where there would have probably been 20 trees previously, and they would have been home to, birds and wildlife. And
in Christchurch, we're in the heart of dairy country here as well. This is, historically, these days, I think, there's a lot of dairy here. Dairy is what keeps Christchurch is kind of baked into the rural community around it, and dairy is absolutely key to that. If you're worried about our environment in New Zealand, maybe you should go cow hunting at night rather than possum hunting.
Or try going without milk.
That's probably a less controversial way of putting that, yeah.
So, Nick, have you found there's been any kind of uptake or engagement with your ideas among ecologists? Do you find that there are people with whom these ideas are resonating, or is it still very much a kind of just a thought experiment for you at this point in time?
I mean, the reason I chose this paper to talk about is because this paper has had remarkable traction in different places, more than anything else I've ever written. And I mean, ecologists, that's a hard nut to crack, right? I think there are people. I think it's had traction with people who talk to ecologists. Right, these bridges are long and require many people in many places. I like to think that has helped in some way. So no, ecologists don't read cultural critique. I wish they would. I have some mates who are ecologists. They think it's a really interesting argument, to take on board. But no one person's going to do these things. But I think it has had an influence, I think, on some people who do talk to ecologists, and maybe people like Ariane Wallach is going to be here as well. Right. So there are some passageways, I think, that hopefully it will be. And my work since has been trying. Because I'm based at Massey University. Massey University is a university, historically an agricultural college, and over the last few decades has been more kind of an ecological university. And so I'm part of an organisation at Massey called the Political Ecology Research Centre, PIC, where we do try and build bridges across the university between those of us doing eco-criticism, political ecology, and speak to our colleagues and the agriculturalists, they're not so fond of us. But the ecologists are certainly interested, and we are getting, kind of trying to build conversations across disciplines in those spaces.
Oh, good on you. And I like that expression, bridges along. I haven't heard that before, but I like it. I'm going to put it into high rotation. Well, Nick, I ask everyone who comes on the podcast to answer 5 quick questions. Are you ready for your 5 quick questions?
I am. I have notes.
Can you recall the first piece of pro-animal scholarship you ever read?
It would have to be Donna Haraway. The time I went through grad school, the space I went through grad school, it has been, I can't recall, the exact moment, but it would have to be Donna Haraway. There's no way it wouldn't be.
Okay, great. Can you recall the first piece of pro-animal scholarship you ever wrote?
Absolutely. It is this article here.
Oh, wow. There you go. The origin story. If you had to name one animal studies scholar who's had a big impact on you, who would it be?
Now, having listened to previous podcasts, I noticed people dodge around this a little bit, and I'm going to dodge too. Not technically an animal studies scholar, but an eco-critic would be William Cronin.
Okay.
William Cronin's essay, when I first read that, and whose name escapes me right now, but everyone listening will know it, I hope, opened my eyes. I thought, wow, we're allowed to think this way, we're allowed to say these things. This is amazing. And that, is it called Against the Wild? Something like that. That article has stuck with me forever. That essay is a...
Oh, fantastic. Well, that's a new name to add into the mix. So what's the most important thing academics can do for animals?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. I've thought about this quite a lot on the plane down here. And I think I'm going to say not hold them up as something special and transcendent and different. I think the animals are not our salvation, and I don't think they're better than us. I don't think they need to be better than us. I think they're the same as us, and that's what they are. They do horrible things, they do great things. I think understanding them not as these like beautiful spiritual savior beings, but instead as, beings like us who need to be cared and loved and respected and thought about, but they're not angels, they're animals. And I think it's really, really important to always remember that.
Fantastic. Well, if you had the power to change one thing about the human-non-human animal relationship, what would it be?
Again, gave this quite a lot of thought. Trying to think of an answer that, I think speaks to something. You can say things like, oh, they should vote or something. But the idea I kind of thought about was maybe we should get rid of the idea of the animal. I don't like the idea of the animal. I think it obscures more than it clarifies. All animals are not equal. There are pests, there are vermin, there are livestock, there are pets. I think those labels, those categories are much more helpful for thinking about them. I think when we lump everything under animal, as probably people know from what I've been saying, that creates lots of blind spots, lots of things that drop out, lots of things we don't think about. I think if we stopped using that word animal, I think it would help us think about them in better, more productive and clearer ways.
Right. Wow. Well, Nick, what are you working on next?
Nothing to do with animals. My animal scholarship tends to be quite responsive. Every so often I think, I've probably said everything I don't have anything more to say. People better qualified than me, and then people ask me to come back in. So, example, the paper I'm giving at this conference is on feral cats, and that's part of a project that I was asked to join to speak to feral cats. So, as far as animals go, I don't know. I'm interested to see where this conference takes me, where it goes. More generally, my next project, I'm putting together a big project on the idea of fun as a political category.
Oh.
No, animals can be fun. Squirrels are fun, but not so animal-centric, I guess.
Okay. Wow. Well, we'll look out for that. So where can people find out more about your work?
As a scholar, as befitting a scholar of my age and rank, I have all the things that are required. There is ResearchGate, there is academia, there is a website that is not active now, but it will be active very soon. So the short answer is the internet.
The internet.
The internet. I'm not sure what other answer could be given. You'll find many useful things on the internet.
Well, Nick, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you to the listeners for joining us for Knowing Animals, a podcast where we speak to animal studies scholars about a piece of their work. Now, you can also follow us on all the places you'd expect to find us, such as Twitter at knowing_animals, or I'm at SO_S. You can follow us at Facebook at Knowing Animals. We also have an Instagram feed. And don't forget to leave a review at iTunes. Reviews make it easier for other people to find us. I'm Siobhan O'Sullivan, and I do like knowing animals.